Noon here from there we go. Good afternoon, everybody, here in the East, and good morning to our friends that are in the West. On behalf of all of us at the Benefits Trust, we'd like to take this opportunity to thank you for joining us today. This is the third Zoomcast we've done on this particular subject, and we'll get into that in a moment. For signing up for today, you are going to get a copy of our Trusted Advisor newsletter, which comes out on a monthly basis. I think we're at, month 156 or something like that, which is awesome. You get signed up for that. You're going to get a CE credit. Mike Ignatz is here, and he's going to send you a CE credit at the end of the session today or the next couple of days, which is great for participating. As well as that, you are going to get a really short survey. Fill it out. Let us know how we did today, how we can do it better tomorrow, and more importantly, tell us what subjects you'd like to see covered in future Zoomcasts. As a matter of fact, the Zoomcast that we're doing today on the sales cycle from start to finish is actually feedback that we have received from a number of you over the last 12 months. So feedback works, and let us know what you want to see in the future, because we want to make your time that you spend with us meaningful and educational. A shout out before we begin. Abigail is in the house. Abigail, turn on your mic.
Hello.
Hello, Abigail, everybody. Abigail is just starting in this business. I think this is week number 2 for you, is it? If my sources tell me correctly.
Yes, your sources are correct.
So that is awesome. Welcome to a terrific business, and we thank you very much for joining us today, and we wish you nothing but success. And
Thank
I
you. I
think this is,
appreciate that. Happy to be here.
yeah, so welcome and sit back and enjoy, because this is riveting stuff, okay? Riveting.
I will. Thank you.
Anyways, on behalf of all of us at the Benefits Trust, thank you again. Mike Ignatz is in the house. He's running things behind the scene as well. Rob Crowder is running things behind the scene, and the lovely Carrie Lane is joining us. If you have a question throughout the presentation today, put your little hand emoji up, and we'll get to you. Or put it in the chat box, and Carrie, Mike, and Rob will be able to answer your question. But that way everybody sees it, because they might have the same questions or the same thoughts, and everybody learns. It's about sharing information. The Zoomcast is not necessarily about being the smartest person in the room, but it really is about being in a room where everybody gets smarter. And that's what it's all about today. It's about being in a room where everybody gets smaller. So let me just share. Oh, another fellow, Simon Marples, has joined us from the West Coast. There he is. Welcome, Simon. Good morning to you. So I'm going to share my screen here and the presentation. Let me just push this and push this and push this, and everybody can see that. And let me just push this. So again, if you have a question, put your hand emoji up, and it'll pop up on my screen. But if you put it in the chat box, Rob, Mike, Gary, they'll be happy to answer it. We're talking about the sales cycle from start to finish. And that's what we're going to do today for the next hour. We're going to finish up at 1 o'clock sharp, 1 o'clock Eastern time sharp. And if you want to stick around for a few minutes afterwards to carry on the conversation, we're more than happy to do so. But if you need to leave, we understand, and Mike will send you the CE credit. Our agenda today is a little bit about the Benefits Trust, and it's not really about a commercial for us, which it is, but it's not. It's really about how we are approaching this subject. You got to know where we're coming from in order to understand why and how we're approaching the subject. We want to talk about what is sales, or what are sales, what is sales. We want to talk about what is a sales cycle and what that means. We want to share with you 3 case studies and some of the lessons learned from those studies, and again, questions, answers, and discussions. Happy to carry on with that. So a little bit about the Benefits Trust, and it's through this lens that we will explore the sales cycle. We started on January 1st, 1994, so we've been around for some time now. I used to have hair, and it's awesome. Now I don't, and because it's so long ago. We're a full service third party benefit administration company, or TPA, as the insurance industry knows it as. We're the largest independently owned TPA in Canada. In 2024, we were named top benefit provider by our friends at Benefit and Pension Monitor magazine. In 2024 and 2025 and in 2026, we were also named a top employer in the benefits marketplace. So we practice what we preach, or I like to say we practice what we preach, for sure, because that's important. And also late in 2025, just last December, we won a 5-star technology award from, again, our friends at Benefit and Pension Monitor magazine because of our app. and the tens of thousands of people that are using our app and the ease of using our app, it's really an entire benefit wallet on your phone. So it's a great app. Uh, what we do is we provide custom employee benefit solutions. Some people think all we do is healthcare spending accounts. That's a really small portion of what we do, but we do provide a full service custom employee benefit solution. That's what we do. We surveyed our clients recently, and like 97% of them came back and we provide exceptional client experience. We've got long-term relationships with all the major Canadian insurance carriers and service suppliers in this space, as well as that our target market is advisors like you that work with clients from 1 to 100 employees. We've got a lot of clients that are over 100 employees, but our target market, where we spend most of our time, is in that space with 1 to 100 employees, because quite frankly, in Ontario alone, there's 450,000 businesses with 1 to 100 employees. So that's where the business is. That's where we spend our time. And it's through this lens that we're going to explore the sales cycle. Sales can be one of the most rewarding businesses to be in. And I'm not talking about insurance sales, Abigail, necessarily, but I'm talking about sales in general. So welcome to the world of sales. And we've got people on the call that have been, doing this for many, many years, and it can be an extraordinarily rewarding business to be in. I've personally been in sales since I think I've been about 13 years old, but it can provide a very profitable, lucrative, and flexible lifestyle if you do it well. That's for sure. And it's got to be one of the most difficult things to do, but it's also, in my opinion, one of the most rewarding. You can feel like $1 million. You can feel like $1 million. You make a great sale, you get a great client, everything lines up, everything clicks. It works extraordinarily well, and you can feel like $1 million, right? You may not make $1 million, but you can certainly feel like $1 million. You just feel great. And what was this guy's name? What was Jordan? I can't think of his name in The Wolf of Wall Street, but you feel like $1 million. As well as that, you can feel like a pirate. You're not sure what's coming next and what's on one side of the boat or the other side of the boat, and you're sort of walking around and you're fighting off things and coming from all different directions. So you can feel like a pirate as well. That's one of the disadvantages of sales. You can feel, like you're not sure what's going to be happening next and what challenges are going to be thrown at you, just like, a pirate in this movie, Pirates of the Caribbean, anyways. Or you can feel down in the dumps. You can feel like you, quite frankly, got the shit kicked out of you, and that's real. I look back over the years being in sales, and some days, you just feel like you've just been beat up. You just been beat up. It comes from all different directions, but you just beat up, and this can all happen before noon. This range of emotions happens on a daily basis. That's why I'm saying this is a very difficult job, being in sales, and especially insurance sales, because you can have these range of emotions in one day, or all before noon in one day for that matter. And I remember talking to a friend of mine that was looking for a career change in the middle of his, working life, shall we say. And I said, have you ever thought about sales and insurance sales? And I could be a mentor to you. And he goes, I just don't have the stomach for it. And what he was really saying is, I don't have the stomach for the range of emotions. And I get it. Not everybody can do it, right? But that's what it, that's one of the issues and one of the barriers to entry in the sales game. It's you can feel these emotions all before noon. What is sales? Well, Dan Sullivan, I'm a subscriber to his business, to his coaching program, and I have been for many, many years, actually more than 36 years. And he came up with a great sales definition. And sales is the process of helping a client achieve a desired future result that is good for them. And it's a very simple term or a very simple sentence when you think about it. It's the process of helping a client achieve a desired future result that is good for them. And think of yourself as, instead of being the salesperson, think of yourself as the purchaser of a solution, right? You're looking you're looking to buy something to improve your life. It's the future result that you're buying. Clients don't buy a quarter-inch hole, or sorry, a quarter-inch drill bit. Pardon me. Clients don't buy a quarter-inch drill bit. They buy a quarter-inch hole. So when you think about it, they're not buying a drill bit. They're buying a hole. And it's up to, Home Depot or Home Hardware or whatever the hardware store is that you frequent. They're the ones that sell you that quarter inch hole. They sell you the solution for that quarter inch hole. You don't need a drill bit as a consumer. You need a hole, and they're going to help you achieve that desired result. So that's the way I want you to think of sales. Sales is the process of helping a client achieve a desired future result that's good for them. And when we think about that, we focus on the future. Focus on the future. Sales can be difficult. Sales is difficult, right? And I think really great salespeople make it look easy, but it's not. You need to find prospects. You need to qualify them. You need to disturb them or disrupt them. You need to motivate them to do something. And this is all before you get paid. You got to find them, you got to qualify them, you got to disturb and disrupt them, and you got to motivate them, all before you make a nickel. All right. And to be successful, you need to do this profitably. And what I mean by this is we are as I mentioned, the largest independently owned TPA in Canada, third-party benefit administration company in Canada. And we can advertise at the World Cup. There's nothing to prevent us from advertising at the World Cup. And we can buy 30-second ads on TV, for all the Blue Jays games. And we could buy every single billboard in Ontario, attracting new business. And we could spend $100 million doing that, but it wouldn't be profitable. So how do we do this profitably? And that's the key thing, is how do we do this profitably? So it's amazing because sales is difficult because we got to find them, qualify them, disrupt them, motivate them, and we have to do it profitably. We have to be well aware of what things cost in our world, and we have to do it profitably. So we need to find prospects. We've spent a lot of time in previous Zoomcasts talking about prospecting and so on, but we got to find the prospects. So prospecting is the process of identifying and connecting potential customers who could benefit from our service, your product, your service, whatever it is that you're selling. But you got to understand who your ideal target market is. And again, we spent a lot of time on this in the past, so we're going to go over this pretty quickly today. But you can look at specific industries. You can look at large companies, small companies, new companies, old companies, geographic limitations. I'm not interested in going to Calgary to have a meeting with a 5 Life case. Now, technology, my attitude has changed. I'm happy to have a meeting with a 5 Life case in Calgary as long as it's a virtual meeting, right? But I'm not prepared to fly there and have a meeting. I'm prepared to fly to Vancouver anytime because then we'll just go up to Whistler and have some fun. But anyways, that's another issue. But we got to identify prospects, and I think it's important to identify prospects. And I look back at some of the people that have participated in these past Zoomcasts, and I look back at some of the other great salespeople that I know that are in this industry, and they specialize. An example, Chris Gorey, he's not on the call today, I don't think, but Chris, specializes in technology companies, new technology companies, and he's got 120 clients that were startups at one point. And they're all in technology. He speaks their language. He understands his prospects, and he understands his target market. So it's important to understand your target market. How do you find them? You got to be creative in the way of finding them. Whether it's newsletters, whether it's social media, for example, emails, in-person door knocking, phone calls, personal handwritten notes can be extraordinarily powerful. Rob, jump in here. You were talking just the other day about this search engine optimization.
Yeah, one thing that's missing from this list is blogs. And when we were talking to our marketing team the other day, they were mentioning that if you put up-to-date blogs out as well, in a lot of cases, AI can find that online because a lot of people are actually using ChatGPT or different AI engines to look for providers and look for information. So when you're putting out different blog pieces talking about certain topics, it'll actually help you land on these AI searches. So again, people are using the internet in a different way now. It's not just Google. You got to optimize your website for AI as well.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. And when you think about that, optimizing your website so AI tools can find you, it's just a whole other level. But it's something that's was, it's as important, when you used to have a corporate pamphlet. Now it's your website, and it's incredibly powerful. And you've got to do all of these things or some of these things to find your prospects. And then you got to qualify your prospects. You must determine whether your prospect is a good fit for your solution and is there a realistic opportunity of doing business together. You know, do they have a need that they're trying to solve? Like, what's the hurt? It's a great question I love to ask because it's very direct, it's very specific. What's the hurt? The other one is, are you dealing with the decision maker? Are they the decision maker? I've handed out a lot of Academy Awards over the years because people say they're the decision maker, but they're not really the decision maker. In my house, I've been married 36 years. Actually, it was our wedding anniversary yesterday. We had been married 36 years. And there are certain things that I am definitely not the decision maker on. That's for sure. Right. But, are they the decision maker or are they really the decision maker? Do they have budget? They have budget for these types of things. And what's their timeline? I'm interested in this, but I'm not interested in this for 2 years. So do you want to spend a lot of time with them necessarily? Because again, it's all about, profitability. And it was interesting. I was riding up the chairlift. I was riding up the chairlift in Whistler, not this past season, but the season before, and I was having a conversation with the chairman of WestJet. And the chairlift ride is about 15 minutes long, and it's amazing the information you can find out. But as soon as I found out he was the chairman of WestJet, I said, "Hey, this is fantastic. You're not a prospect for us because we don't work with companies like you." And then the conversation opened up because I learned an awful lot about him. He was holding his cards pretty close to his chest, and then as soon as he found out that I wasn't trying to pitch him on anything, I got a whole bunch of information, valuable information from him. But I didn't want to spend a lot of time wasting to try to pitch this guy because it's never going to work. Never going to work. You got to disturb them and disrupt them. Research, as I like to say, research the prospect first to understand who you're speaking to. And I'm not talking necessarily about the individual. I'm talking about their industry, their company. You gotta understand who they are and what they are and then you got to lead with a quick value proposition, not a sales pitch. You got to focus on their needs and goals. Really got to focus on their future needs and goals, not, and I like to say avoid sales and industry jargon. You can say, hey, yeah, well, you know what? I make sure that the insurance companies use a GAM83 unisex mortality table, and me and my clients going, I don't know what you're talking about, and get out of my office, right? But you got to create curiosity. Instead of explaining your solution per se, talk about the outcome, right? And I like to say, ask for a short meeting. Today, it's. Oh, Michael, can you mute yourself, please? Thanks. We got to create curiosity. It's about explaining the outcome, and I like to say, ask for a short meeting. Hey, can we meet for 10 minutes? Can we meet virtually for 10 minutes? Right? And when they say no, it's not a good time right now. Is there a better time? How's October? Yeah, that's always a better time. But when you think about this, lead with a quick value proposition. Pardon me. What I like to say is we help successful business owners build a better benefit plan than they can get anywhere else. It's a value proposition, right? It's a value proposition. Jay Nadler, who is on Vancouver Island, he starts with a value proposition. It just escaped me for a moment, but he goes, I help protect people from unexpected bankruptcy or something like that. But it's, wow, that's interesting. I get that. It's not a sales pitch, it's a value proposition. And then focus on their needs and goals, right? Focus on their needs and goals. What's the biggest danger you're facing right now? Great question. It's not sales jargon, industry jargon. It's hey, what's your biggest fear? What's the biggest danger you've got in your business? What hurts, right? Because it's focusing on them, right? Create curiosity. If I could show you a way to have all of your medical expenses paid for in the most tax effective manner, would that be of interest to you? As opposed to, hey, let me set up your benefit plan so it's tax effective. No, if I could show you a way, you're creating that curiosity. Hey, can we meet for 10 minutes next week when we can focus on this call, right? Can we meet for 10 minutes next week? Oh, no, October's better. Fantastic. What I used to do all the time when I was making cold calls is I would ask someone for a meeting, they would say no. Is October better? Fantastic, right? And then I'd put a note in my calendar to call them back in October, and I'd say, hey, it's Rob Crowder calling. We spoke on June 17th. I'm just looking at the date on my phone here. We spoke on June 17th, and you asked me to call you on October 10th. And they may remember the conversation, but because you had such specific things, they're looking at you going, wow, this guy's awesome because we spoke on a specific date and you asked me to call you on this date and it's that date. So it creates that opportunity. So you need to disturb and disrupt your clients. Then you need to motivate them. You need to motivate your prospects. You got to understand what their goals and challenges are. Identify the risk of doing nothing. That's a big thing, the risk of waiting. You got to share a future result that's good for them, right? And where this became abundantly clear to me is our home where we live in Huntsville, Ontario. We bought this home, I think 15 years ago, or 12 years ago now. I can't remember, but 12, 15 years ago, but it needed a lot of work, and we knew that. And I was, built a relationship with our builder, and he did this major renovation and extension on the place and so on. And anyways, we had plans, and we were meeting at one of his job sites, and he had the plans open on the back of his truck, and we were going through them, and he's going, the windows are going to go here, and the roof's going to go here, and the door's going to go there, and all this, building type stuff. But then I asked him the question. I said, Trevor, his name's Trevor Grow, and I asked him the question. I go, Trevor, what are we looking at for a budget for this? And he goes, oh. And he was about 30 at the time, maybe a bit younger, late 20s. And he closes up the plans on his truck and he goes, budget. Okay, you want to talk about budget? Or he goes, do you want to talk about budget? Or do you want to talk about what it feels like to drive in your driveway every time you come home and it feels amazing that you are saying, welcome, the building that you've built, this home that you built is saying welcome home. And I go, yeah, that's the feeling I want. And he goes, great. We never talked about budget again. Right. So it was really interesting because you want to share the future result that's good for them. And Trevor shared that future result that was good for us, and it worked. It worked extraordinarily well. So I got schooled by a 29-year-old. You got to create a compelling reason to act. People don't buy products, they buy better outcomes and a clearer path to achieving them. Right? You got to build that trust and credibility. And again, this is all before you're getting paid, right? And it can happen very quickly. It can happen, over time. But these are all things you got to do before you get paid. And, lastly, or not lastly, but you gotta get a client to take action. You've disturbed them, you've created the curiosity, etc. But you've got to get them to take action. And you got to make it easy. And it's interesting, I've thought a lot about why people delay decisions. And I think people delay decisions because they're confused. People delay decisions because they're confused. When you talk to a client, they go, let me think about it. And, I'll get back to you later. Are they really thinking about it or are they just confused? Right? You got to make it easy. We have the easy button on our desks, right? Everybody in our office has one on their desk. And we want to make it easy for people to deal with us, right? We don't want confusion. You've got to clearly explain the problem, clearly explain the solution, clearly explain the next steps. One of the reasons why we won an award for our app is because when we were talking to the app developer, we said, first and foremost, this app has to be user friendly. It's got to be really, really easy to use. And his comment back to us was, that's great because under our benefit plan, because my wife works for Sun Life, and I use their app and it is incredibly difficult to use. He goes, we're just going to take the opposite approach and we're going to make it real easy. So it's like, you got to make it easy. You got to connect the solution to their goals and clearly qualify the value of those goals. Hey, it can be easy, it can be direct and so on, but you've got to direct it and connect it with their goals. This is going to make your business better because of X or Y, right? You got to highlight the risk of waiting. As I just mentioned, you got to highlight, hey, if you don't do this, your business isn't going to be better. right? You got to ask, for a clear next step, create a call to action, and you got to make it easy for them. It's interesting because a lot of companies, and we're going to share this in the three examples, all three of these cases in the sales cycles got the AORs, the agent of record letter, before they even did any proposals or talked about budgets, right? It's I can get all this information for you from the insurance company, so I'm going to make it easy for you, right? So you don't have to take your eye off the ball, right? We'll do all that work in the background, so we can make it really easy for you. You know, and they're not wasting time on doing endless proposals. As I like to say, and I'm going to say it, throughout this. Oh, it's on the next slide, actually. There we go. You got to, let me jump down to that point. Yes pays you. When you get a client to say yes, it pays you, right? When you get a client that says no, it teaches you. When you get a client that says maybe, it kills you. And when you're not clear, they say maybe, it kills you. And you're doing endless proposals and endless iterations of that proposal. And that's what costs you money. And I was thinking about it, in preparation of this session today. If I had all the time that I had spent on maybe back, I'd probably still have hair, for goodness sakes, right? Um, but I think a great question to ask, and it's the tough question. And I like to ask this question early in the meeting, when I'm meeting somebody new, is if I could show you a measurable change to your problem, are you willing to fire your existing advisor? And you use that word, fire. Like everybody understands what that means. Everybody understands what it means to fire or to be fired or to get fired or to have to fire somebody, right? It's everybody understands it. It's clear, it's concise. And I learned this from through a friend of mine that sells trucking insurance in the United States. And he sells trucking insurance. And in Tennessee, there's his top producer is this lady from Tennessee, and she sells trucking insurance. And let's call it what it is, right or wrong. It's a man's world in the trucking business in Tennessee. And she's a middle-aged lady that always is dressed to the nines and looks fantastic and walks into a meeting, understands the sales process very, very well, and always asks this question. If I could show you a measurable change to your problem, are you prepared? Are you willing to fire your existing advisor? And then watch, learn, and listen, because not all communication is verbal. Yes, I'm prepared to fire my existing advisor. Are they really? Right? Watch, learn, and listen. But it's a very powerful question to ask because it's going to, you're going to know right away whether or not you've got an opportunity with this particular prospect. So it's asking tough questions. Another thing I like to say is be interested and be interesting. Separate yourself from other advisors by listening, and you can be successful, right? It's by listening to what they're having to say. It's not about you, it's about them. You got to ask questions to understand exactly what the client's needs are, so you're not wasting their time. They won't want to meet with hey, everybody wants to meet with somebody as long as they're not wasting time, right? I don't want to meet with somebody just for the purpose of meeting with them. I've got other things I'd rather do, right? I want the meetings to be meaningful, right? So you got to ask questions to understand exactly what the client's needs are. You've got one of these and two of these. It's about listening. The other thing is find the common ground to build trust, right? Find the common ground to build trust. And that common ground can be a number of things, whether it's your schools you went to, schools your kids go to, I don't know, traveling, skiing, golfing. Dave Patriarch, who everybody or a lot of people know, who's the president of Mainstay Insurance, but he's also the president and creator of CGIB, Canadian Group Insurance Brokers, that association. But, he's a sailor that sells benefits. Excuse me. So he creates that common ground right in his value proposition, which is interesting, right? And you got to ask for their business, but you've got to create the value first. So, you got to find these people, you got to qualify them, you got to disturb them, you got to create value first before you can do anything, right? So let's get into the sales cycle. Let's share with you how these particular three advisors worked with their clients through this process to get a profitable client, right? So the first one that we're going to examine is a plan with no change after the renewal. The owner doesn't see the value, and the existing advisor is quite complacent. The second case is a partnership arrangement, and one of the partner has very large claims. And then the third one is a new business, and they're exploring benefits for the first time. So that's what we're going to talk about in these three different case studies. And they're all interesting. They all come from sort of different directions. That's why we chose them to share with you. The first one is the client problem. The client problem. The client has been concerned about not getting value from the plan. And when he's got these concerns because it's not clear. It's back to the decision making, they're avoiding making decisions because it's not clear, right? Well, they've got concerns that there's no value in the benefit program, or little value in the benefit program, or the money they're spending, they're not getting the value out of, because quite frankly, the client now has a little bit more time to look at their benefit plan, and he doesn't understand it. He doesn't understand the renewal reports that are being sent to him and being delivered to him and so on. But one thing he doesn't understand, that in this case, that the client really doesn't understand, is he hasn't had an increase in 2 years. He hasn't had a benefit plan increase in 2 years. Well, everything has gone up in price. Like, everything has gone up in price. The other night, just Michelle was talking about it. She was talking about Renee's blue cheese dip, or blue cheese dressing. And she goes, I remember when we used to get two of these for $7, and that was like a year ago, or 2 years ago, or 3 years ago. Now one is $7 by itself, right? And it's not that the $7 is going to make a difference in our life at this point, but it was just the amount of increase. So everything's increasing around us: the price of gas, the price of homes, the price of insurance, the price of groceries, for goodness sakes. You can't turn on the news without talking about it. You can't open up your phone and look at social media without somebody talking about the price of things going up. Everything's going up, but my benefit plan costs haven't gone up in 2 years. So he's going, I don't understand these reports. My costs haven't gone up, right? And then the client's been asking the advisor, if the plan, what's going on with the plan. And he gets the standard answer: your plan is running well. That's nails on a chalkboard to me. Oh, it's running well. Says who, right? Haven't had a rate increase in 2 years. Oh, the plan's running well. It might be running well from the insurance company's perspective, but it's certainly not running well for my business. So anyways, in this case, the client was frustrated. Things weren't clear. And the client called a new advisor who had been in contact with them for the previous 18 months. And pitching isn't the right word, but his value proposition that was consistent in all of his messaging to this client in his target market was value through clarity. Value through clarity. So this particular individual advisor found this client 18 months prior to the client having this problem, but found this client because he was in his target market, and he called him once or twice, but he also sent something of value, articles, sent them messages and so on, whether it be blogs and a whole bunch of different things, but spread out over an 18-month period. But the value proposition was always value through clarity. And this client did not have the clarity. So the message there is, you got to pitch something. And I hate to use that word pitch, sales jargon, but you've got to have a consistent message. And you've got to live up to that message. But you got to have a consistent message. It doesn't matter what it is, as long as it's consistent, right? But this particular advisor was pitching value through clarity. So they had an initial meeting. And in the initial meeting, the advisor, the new advisor, or the potential advisor at this point, was asking great questions. And what he learned was the new advisor learned that the plan was not running well. It's pretty easy to say, because there's been no increases in 2 years, and the price of everything goes up, including healthcare and including dental care, but there's been no increase. So there's something out of whack here. So through education, a quick conversation with this new advisor who knew what he was doing, the client realized that they were paying far too much for their benefit plan. They realized that they were paying far too much. So a formal review was requested by the client. And again, back to the let's make it easy. The client said, or the advisor said to the client or the prospective client, the prospective client at this point, great, I want to make this really easy for you. All I need are your last two renewal reports. It's all I need. And I can do a quick analysis to determine and to share with you on why your plan is not running well. Before the end of that meeting, the client was typing away and sending the email to the advisor. So the advisor had the two renewal reports. He examined them, called them back, and they had a meeting. And what he found out, it was a 35 life case, fully insured health and dental coverage, 100% unlimited plan, through the insurance company, paramedical benefits, dental benefits, had a 78% target loss ratio. He confirmed that there was a 10% flat commission on $145,000 in premium or $14,500 commission paycheck. There was life AD&D and LTD, and the plan had been in place for 15 years. And he believed through a comment that the client made to him, the potential new advisor, that it had been in place with the same provider for that whole 15-year period. So there was a couple of things that were interesting, and one of the big ones was that $14,500 worth of commission because he wants to use that as leverage. So the solution and the ASO quote revealed that it wasn't really a quote per se, it was just a peek at the health and dental component of their benefit plan and a very quick calculation that said they would have a material reduction in their benefit budget because they were paying far too much. Their experience was I can't remember exactly, but somewhere in the 50-55% range. So no wonder there was no rate increase. The plan was running well, yeah, from the insurance company's perspective. The advisor demonstrated this and he realized that they were paying far too much over the last couple of years, and that was a problem. As well as that, the advisor said, "Hey, your business is doing extraordinarily well. It's profitable, and let's talk about a benefit plan that has 100% benefit plan for you." And what we mean by that, and we've spent a lot of time talking about executive plans that we can certainly sell through the benefits trust, but it's 100% of all medical and dental expenses that this business owner may have. So I wear glasses, and I only wear glasses when I use my computer. So I've got 3 pairs of glasses, one for my office, one for my home office, and one for my briefcase. So I never have to look for my glasses. I always know where they are. Well, those glasses cost me $1,800, $600 a pair times 3 pairs. It cost me $1,800. I would have had to pay for that $1,800 out of my pocket, but no, my benefit plan says I have 100% of all expenses. So therefore, it was easy to explain the difference of why to have that 100% plan. So it was interesting when the advisor pointed this out and pointed out that the client, the current advisor, was not doing a great job, in fact, and wasn't advising him well on the plan design. And number three, was being paid $14,500 a year. An AOR was signed on the spot, and the client wanted a new plan implemented within 45 days, and he wanted the expenses reduced. So it was interesting because the reason why he fired the existing client or existing advisor is because he wasn't getting good advice. He was listening to his spidey sense. He wanted clarity through value, as well as that he wanted to be paid, or he wanted the new advisor, to be paid during this transition. So he got the AOR signed on the spot, so he would get commissions going forward, even though they were moving the plan. So then this sales cycle, the business owner became very unhappy with the previous advisor's complacency. This sales cycle was an 18-month sales cycle from cold calls, mailing, something of value, contacts, to an AOR being signed and a carrier change. And the business owner was receptive to receiving the cold calls because he wanted to be educated, right? So again, it's that consistent message of clarity, clarity through education, or what was the client's, it was clarity, value through clarity, pardon me, value through clarity. So, this one was a bit of a slow burn, but this advisor was instructing us when we were doing the research for this, that, he was sending this out to many, many, many prospects in his target market. So this was very much a profitable client because the process worked as it should have, right? He received a couple of calls and received a couple of mailings, and really they didn't cost that much, and didn't waste a lot of time doing proposals, and got the client. Simple as that. Got the client. So he didn't do a whole bunch of maybes, right? It was easy. Not easy. I shouldn't say easy. It worked the way it should have. Second one, a really kind of interesting thing, but it was a social meeting at a party. We all go to parties, or most of us go to parties, and it was a social meeting at a party, and a group of attendees at this particular party were discussing the ridiculous amounts of taxes that we have to pay in this country. So this party was in early April, I believe, and right around tax time. And I can't remember if it was a party or a wedding or whatever it was, but there was some type of gathering, and people were talking about the ridiculous amount of taxes. Now, I've certainly been at parties where that topic has been discussed. And then the virtue of private healthcare was debated. And again, you're at a party, it's pretty superficial, but it was debated. But during the discussion, the advisor that was there learned that one of the participants in this discussion was a business owner, but also had large ongoing medical expenses in his family. So she, in this case, knew who the players were in this conversation, or knew at least one of the players was a business owner, and this business owner was mentioning the large ongoing medical expenses and was paying for them out of pocket, and the huge amount of taxes, and the cocktail fuel discussion made it interesting. Anyways, but later in the evening, the advisor mentioned to the business owner privately, she made a point of running into him somewhere and privately said, "Hey, that was a really interesting comment you made when we were discussing, your ongoing medical expenses. But if I could show you a way to pay for those in a more tax-effective manner, would that be of interest to you?" And again, this was done privately. It wasn't done in front of a group. And the client said, "I'd be very interested in that, like for sure." And then this is interesting. She asked for permission to call him at a later date to set up a meeting, and that permission was granted. So she asked permission to call him. Very subtle, very professional, very respectful, and very private at a party. Great. So the advisor reached out, or the advisor, pardon me, researched the industry a bit, researched the company, and researched the client, through various social medias and so on, right? But interestingly enough, she sent a personal note on Monday to that particular individual, and said, "Hey, it was really nice meeting you at, John and Jennifer's party last or Saturday night, and I will give you a call in a few days as we discussed." Something along those. But it was a personal handwritten note. Very few people get personal handwritten notes today, so they really stand out. I love sending them. And then what happened was she followed up with a phone call asking for a 30-minute virtual meeting, and the meeting was set for the following week. So the client met her at a party, got a personal note, I'm sorry, asked permission for a call. That permission was granted, wrote a personal note, then called the client and said, "Can we have a 30-minute block of time to discuss this when we're both focused on it?" And that meeting was set for the following week. So the discovery during that 30-minute meeting was there was a standard plan in place for the partnership, and a base coverages for all, and there was a couple of partners and a couple of employees. It was an extremely profitable company. There was minimal life insurance and AD&D and disability. And again, there was 2 partners in this case and 5 employees. So there was a 7-person plan. Not a big plan, but nonetheless, still profitable. Great. So that was what the discovery was. But the problem was, and again, through questioning and so on, one of the partners had extraordinary claims, expenses for a child that has special needs. And the client, the partner in this case, was paying for those things with out of pocket because the medical tax credit that's available through the Income Tax Act is very minimal. So the advisor in this case was discussing the 100% plan again for the owners. And then there was a discussion about expense equalization opportunities. That's not part of the plan, it's part of the solution, right? And it was also discovered that the partners do not want Life AD&D and LTD because they have their own individual policies through their own association. And even though it's a small amount, their own professional association, even though it's a small amount, I think it was $25,000 of life and $2,500 of LTD that was available through the plan. They didn't want to pay for it because they just didn't want it. They thought it was ridiculous that they had to have it. So the client or the prospect in this case, pardon me, learned all this information and during this 30-minute call. And at the end of the call, suggested an approach. If I was working with you, we would set up a plan that would be 100% unlimited for the partners to pay for all of their expenses in the most tax effective way possible. All right, semi-annual utilization report providing the partners showing each of the owners or partners' total claims, right? Not saying that what they're claiming it on, just what their total claims are. And then again, an internal expense equalization strategy was discussed. Again, not part of the plan, part of the solution, completely separate from the benefit plan. The strategy also, or the proposed approach also include, keep the life in AD&D and LTD for the employees only. You don't have to have it, which was a big relief for these guys because they didn't want to pay for it. And that approach was to be discussed with the other partner and then report back. So it was a very clear approach that this particular advisor, she wanted to make based on the meeting information that she found out in this meeting because of the questions that she asked. So great. So 48 hours later, 2 days later, she got a call back from the client and said, we like the approach. Let's move forward. So again, no proposals, no, if I could, save you 10% on your current plan. No, they bought the approach. An AOR was signed 48 hours later. The new plan was to be implemented effective immediately. Like she got marching orders to get this done. The sales cycle in this case was less than a month. The current advisor was fired because of lack of understanding of the client's personal needs. He wasn't curious enough. He just put a plan in place. Here's a great 7-person plan. Have a good day. Right? He wasn't curious enough. He wasn't solving the real problem. The real problem was the client, the partner, had lots of money, but he also had lots of needs. And the 100% tax effective plan was a way to solve that individual's problems. So in this case, the start to finish timeline was less than a month, and this is a profitable case. It's a 7-person group, but it was, a 30-minute discussion with an approach, a suggested approach, and a follow-up email outlining that approach, and that's what they bought. Again, no proposal, no searching the marketplace, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the lessons that we learned here are hang out at parties, go to parties, right? And I'm not joking, right? You got to go to where your prospects are. You got to go to where your prospects are. If your prospects are, business owners that are wealthy, hang out where business owners are wealthy. Hang out in those circles. Find a way to get involved in those circles and hang out at those circles because it's amazing on who you meet. It's amazing on who you meet. I'm going to a session. I'm going to a gala in a couple of weeks up here in Lake of Bays. And I'm willing to bet that probably 80% of the people at this gala are going to be business owners. Right. So it's, you got to hang out where your prospects hang out. In the simplest form. Case study number 3, a few minutes to go. Case study number 3. The business owner was afraid of benefits. He got spooked. He got sticker shock. He was afraid of benefits. So benefits were loosely discussed with one of his colleagues, one of his business owner friends, right? And I don't know if they were at their golf club or where, but they had this discussion. And the discussion was, yeah, I got to implement a benefit program. What are you doing for benefits, to his friend? And he says, hey, we've got this great plan because I have a great advisor. So there was a referral made to the friend's advisor. And the meeting was reluctantly agreed to. Right? The guy, it's like, hey, I got a guy. You got to talk to my guy. I got a guy. Right? So it was really interesting because the meeting was set. although the advisor or the client, prospective client, told the advisor that he was quite reluctant, but it was a warm introduction and he agreed to the meeting. So what he realized during the meeting, um, that by asking a series of questions, the client had a great deal of fear, and he looked at he had a lot of he had a lot of control over his business, and he had a great deal of fear because in the past, he tried to look at benefit plans, and the two advisors that he had talked to recommended sort of an off-the-shelf plan. They were quick to recommend a solution, and the solution came at a pretty big price. And he was concerned about what was going to happen when the rate guarantee wore off, or like a year and a half, 2 years later, whatever it was. And then, what's going to happen. And the owner doesn't think the client's going to, or the employees are going to get a great deal of value out of this. And, all of a sudden costs are going to go up, and he wants more control. So he was really kind of had sticker shock about benefits in the past, and he didn't have a positive experience, but he knew he had to start a plan. So again, he was talking to his friend, and his friend said, I got this guy. So the discovery, the advisor asked great questions, and it's a relatively newer company. It's been around for a couple of years, but they wanted to set up the first benefit plan. They knew the guy had this fear because he was asking these great questions. And he also learned that cost control was very important, to the client because they're a new business. So cost control was critically important. Also, the demographics of the company were very young. Average age was about 32 years old, apparently. And the business owner wants a flexible plan to attract and retain employees. So again, sticker shock, but what was important to them was cost control. They wanted a plan that was good for their younger demographics, and it was, flexible to attract and retain new employees. So some great sales questions that the advisor asked in the meeting wasn't about, deductibles and co-insurance. He was asking about, what's important to you? Is your business growing? Why is it growing in this fashion? And, how do you find new staff? And what's your biggest fear, and so on. And we encourage you to visit our website, thebenefitstrust.com. Go to the Advisor Resource Center. We've got a document in there, 101 sales questions, and it's just a great reference piece. But you got to ask these questions. And again, it's not about deduct. You want a plan with a deductible or co-insurance? No, it's about, hey, what's your biggest fear? Right? Some great questions to ask. So the solution was the new advisor asked them a lot of questions to determine that a standard plan wouldn't work for them. So flexibility is important due to the younger demographics. The new advisor, or the owner, decided to work with this new advisor going forward because of the great questions, and there was going to be a design of a plan that met all of their needs. The client trusted him because the client trusted this particular advisor because he asked them a lot of questions and took time to educate the client on benefit plans. So a new plan was designed focusing on budget control, or the new plan was to be designed focused on budget control, flexibility, and education. Again, it's not about you. It's not about the insurance company or companies in this case. It's about the client. It's always about the client. And this is what they want. So it was clearly identified, hey, let's build a plan together that focuses on budget control, flexibility, and education. Great. That's what they bought. They bought flexibility, budget control, and education. Simple. So the solution in this case, going forward a bit here, there was an 100% unlimited coverage for the owner. Awesome. We talked about that. They put in an 80% drug plan with a drug card with a $5,000 drug max for the employees. They put in 80% dental coverage, levels 1 and 2, basic stuff. $750 max, $2,000 family max combined. $1,000 HSA for all employees. Again, everybody's treated equally, whether they're single or family. Here you go. It's $1,000. Use this as you want. The hybrid plan gives the employees more flexibility than just a more robust healthcare spending account. So instead of just giving them money and saying, have a good day, hey, they got some basic coverage in there, and hey, drug card and all those wonderful things in our app, and so on and so forth. Right. And it was also decided that there was going to be no pooled coverage at this point. So no life, AD&D, LTD, CI, out of country, etc. Because this is a new plan, and instead of throwing everything at it at once, and that's why the previous two advisors that were in there months earlier, spooked this guy and got sticker shock because they were throwing everything in there. He says, "Hey, why don't we build this plan? Why don't we implement this plan? And then why don't we add things to it when the company reaches certain milestones?" Um, so that's what was decided, and it was kind of neat because not one price proposal was discussed. What was more important was, again, what was more important was he bought budget control, he bought flexibility, and he bought education. That's what was discussed. And that's what this plan was designed around. It wasn't anything to do with the money per se. It was about the control, the education, and the flexibility. And that's what was decided. And then they decided to move forward with that. So the sales cycle in this particular case was a little bit longer. There was an initial referral meeting, the education meeting. There was a design meeting, and then there were subsequent discussions because the owner wanted to do it right and wanted to do it well. And the plan implementation from start to finish, the whole process took about 7 months from the initial meeting to the plan being started and educating and educating the employees and so on. So this is a profitable client, without a doubt. It's a profitable client. And, it's a warm referral from, "Hey, I got a guy that I think will help you overcome your fears." That warm referral works. So I think it's important, the lesson that we learned in this particular case is are you referable? Are you referable? You hope you are, but let's ask the question, right? And really dig deep on that. Are you referable? And the answer, I think, is you can be extraordinarily referable if you solve people's problems. If you're just peddling benefits, you may not be referable. But if you're really solving the problems, if you're solving someone's problem, you are instantly referable. So every prospect and client has a different sales cycle. There's no such thing as, hey, it's going to take 6 months to get a client. No, it could take a month, it could take a day, it could take one meeting, it could take a series of meetings. But every client has a different sales cycle. Every client is unique. Asking the appropriate questions and learning about your client is the most important thing. Communication must be simple, clear language, avoid industry jargon. Are you prepared to fire your existing client? Hey, budget control is important to you. This is what budget control is, right? Lead with value, not solutions. Success requires understanding, educating, and motivating clients to a future outcome that is good for them. That's what in the third case, this guy bought was a future outcome that was good for them. Be smart with your time. As an advisor, right? Not every prospect is going to be a client. It's as simple as that, but you got to be smart with your time. You got to know when it's time to move on, when it's not the right fit. My favorite line is next, right? Don't get emotional about it, just next. Don't waste time. Don't be afraid to ask for the business early. You get paid for sales, right? But don't be afraid to ask the question, ask for the business early, right? And don't be afraid to tell the client how you're compensated. I've never understood that. Never understood why people don't tell people. I used to lead with that years ago. Walk into a meeting and say, "Hey, you've got, 20 employees. You can do the math. You've got 20 employees. And do you realize that your advisor is getting paid $16,000 a year or $20,000 a year or $5,000 a year, whatever the number was? What are they doing for that $5,000? This is what I'm doing. This is the future, the value that I'm going to create." But anyways, don't be afraid, but don't be afraid to say next. Remember, no teaches you, yes pays you, maybe kills you. That's what you spend time on. It kills you, maybe kills you. So questions, answers, discussions. I'm going to stop sharing right now, but it is almost 1 o'clock. And we want to thank you all very much for your time today. We're going to stick around for a few minutes, of course. But if you have any, questions, thoughts, ideas, think I'm nuts, all right, anything that hasn't been answered in the, chat box, we're happy to chat with you about. Mike is going to send you a CE credit, correct, Mike? CE credits are going out. On behalf of Carrie and Rob and Mike and myself, we want to thank you very much for your time. And you're going to be signed up for our Trusted Advisor newsletter. Send us back the survey. Tell us how we did and how we can do it better tomorrow. And tell us future ideas that you'd like to be seen, covered in Zoomcast We wish you continued good selling. And Abigail, you're in for a real ride. It's going to be fun. You're going to love it. And it's a great industry. And thank you very much for joining us, Abigail. Appreciate your time. Welcome to the
Thank you for
industry.
having me.
Yeah, this is awesome. Okay, everybody, thank you very much. Any questions, thoughts, ideas?